Hello, you're listening to Overwhelm is Optional. Hello and welcome to the first episode of Overwhelm is Optional of 2021, a year that we were all happy to welcome in and say goodbye to 2020, and now we're dealing with another lockdown. So I'm changing this episode from what it was going to be because that feels right, and what feels right and what I feel inspired to share with you seems to be the best way to go for me. So I want to talk about a conversation, a really interesting conversation that I've been getting into with an amazing transformative coach called Dan Warburton, and I'm going to be interviewing him soon on the podcast. And we've got into an interesting conversation over the news. Now, the news, research shows this, the news can seriously damage your health because it tends to be emotionally manipulative, attention seeking, and very, very negative. It can be very disempowering. And in general, absorbing the news all the time isn't very good for us. So there's problems here, aren't there? How do we stay informed without absorbing lots of negativity that's unhelpful, that doesn't enable us to make changes in the world and can damage our health, our mental health and our health, because stress goes into the body. And right now, your health is very, very precious. So we want to do everything to support our health, everything to support our happiness. We have a duty to be happy. Those of us who are healthy at the moment are so fortunate. We have a duty to be healthy and happy as much as we can be. So let's just talk about the news. The news is one of a lot of things like social media use, etc., that can have a negative effect on us. And as you know, I'm very big on controlling your attention, learning to control your attention so that you stay out of overwhelm and you live really well with energy, happiness, connection, joy, out of overwhelm, finding your sense of ease, feeling at home in yourself, in your body. So the news is what we're going to tackle today. So Dan and I ended up having this conversation on Facebook, which is continuing. I'm quite excited about it, about how the news should come with a health warning. And being very visual and creative, I immediately had this picture of that you get it on the side of a cigarette packet. So I made one and I'm posting about it, and yeah, we're enjoying the conversation, but we're absolutely serious. So I, like many people, stopped watching or listening or reading the news many years ago because positive psychology showed the damage that it did. Now, what's really interesting about daring to stop listening to the news as an intelligent, well-educated, well-informed, highly opinionated person is that the news still filters through. And I find this extraordinary. I don't quite know how it does, but it always filters through. So I think there was only one time that maybe I should have known about something but didn't, so it was a little bit embarrassing. But it was fine, and I let it go, and I explained, I'm sorry, I choose not to engage with the news because it's not good for me. And those people weren't at all worried that I didn't know. And that's fine. So yes, it takes courage. You have to dare to say, no, I'm going to disconnect from this constant attention seeking, emotionally manipulative, very fast moving news cycle. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about not being informed. I'm not talking about putting your head in the sand. I'm talking about taking back control of your attention for your own health and happiness. Because the thing is, we need you to pay attention to what's really important, to look after yourselves, to look after yourself and step into health and happiness and joy and really living fully, because you have something important to share in the world. And if listening to the news takes away from your power, takes your energy, makes you feel overwhelmed and really down, then that's rubbish and not acceptable. But it takes courage. So I'm daring you to break listening to the news cycle And what I mean by that is that manipulative, the emotionally manipulative, attention-seeking headlines, and that cycle that moves too fast to actually be informative. That's what I'm talking about. So I'm not talking about not being informed. I'm talking about disengaging with something which is mentally unhelpful and unhealthy. So what happened though is that last year I started getting addicted to the news again, not surprisingly, because obviously pandemic hit and I wanted to know what was going on. And I went through a lot of fear at the beginning, and then I went into there's some crazy stuff going on that doesn't make sense. And then I started getting sucked into the conspiracy theories because we had a lot of mismanagement and distrust going on from people who have more power than us. And then I've come out of that and just started to really step back from it and really reduce what I'm reading. So really start to control my attention again. So now I'm just using fact-checking websites because there's just too much rubbish out there. And then the government actually provides very helpful COVID information, which is kept up to date. And actually, if you want to know what's going on, you can go on there. The Office of National Statistics provides the statistics. So you don't need to go, you can go to actual sources of information. It's not always that easy because they're not out there grabbing your attention and they take some searching. But there's ways of being actually informed and making your own mind up rather than trying to filter through what's trying to sell. Because it's marketing, isn't it? It's trying to sell to you, which is fine. They're newspapers. They've got to make money, but it's not good if it's not good for your mental health or your physical health, because they're not separate. Then you can make a choice to get your information, actual news, in a different way. Another thing I think is important is that the news isn't the news. It's a selected, very negative, doom-laden emergency stuff that sends you into high alert state and hijacks your attention, because that's what it needs to do to grab your attention. Because if it doesn't grab your attention, it's not read. And if it's not read, they don't make any money. So there's a lot of other news going on which isn't out there. And most of that will be positive. And that's because, as you know, your mind has a negative bias. So if I want to get your attention, it's easier to get it using emotionally manipulative words and images than it is to put something positive. That's the negative bias. And it's not that your mind's terrible. Your mind is brilliant, but you have to understand and get to know how your mind works. And your mind has a negative bias because that keeps you safe and miserable. So to counteract that, which is your job to do, to get out of overwhelm, to take back control of your attention, because where you place your attention is your life. To get out of that, you have to deliberately reduce the negativity and seek out the positive. So in terms of news, looking for good news is important. So I support positivenews.org because it puts positive news stories out, and God knows we need some of those. And there's always positive. There's always negative and there's always positive. And the human mind will go towards the negative. Your job is to train and control your attention so you're also absorbing the positive. So one criticism people will say if you choose to disengage from the news cycle is, well, you're not staying informed. And then they talk about balance. But the thing is, the news cycle is very imbalanced. By definition, it has to be if it wants to grab your attention. So actually, balance comes from stepping back, taking back control of your attention and making your own mind up. So, and allowing a lot more positive news into your life. So I do recommend you check out Positive News if you find that helpful. If you don't, ignore me, because it's your life, your mind, and it's about controlling your attention in a way that nourishes you, that allows you to live, really live. Now, obviously, there are journalists out there who are doing really important work. And it's not that the news is inherently good or evil. It's just that how you choose to use it impacts your life, and having an awareness of that is important. But where do we find the work done by journalists who are doing really good reporting? It's quite hard to find. It's much harder to find very quickly because it's slower. So I've been trying to find out a slower form of news. And at the moment I'm experimenting with something called tortoise news, and they send me an email and it's just more in depth because it's slower. I guess that'll be the clue in the name, tortoise news. So you could try that, but I don't know. I don't have the answers for you. I'm just highlighting the fact that the news could be seriously impacting on your health, and your health is precious, so look after it. And your happiness is precious. So how can we stay informed without going down that negative spiral, without impacting negatively on our health? So that's the conversation. So for me, disconnecting from the fast, provocative news cycle of doom is very important to me. Using informative websites to find out what's really going on is really important to me. Balancing things out with supporting in-depth reporting wherever you can find it. And also there are several sources of positive news which are saying the same thing as me. So deliberately seeking those out. If you've got any more, I'd absolutely love to know, because I'd like to get a list out there for people who also want to do this. So please do just email me at Heidi@HeidiMark. That's Heidi Mark with an e.co.uk. So Heidi@HeidiMark with an e.co.uk. Just message me if you've got this stuff, or put it out on Facebook yourself or on social media and say, this is good reporting, this is helpful reporting, this is in-depth quality journalism. Support those journalists. So important at the moment. Sources of positive news. Please share them. And then I want to talk about the why, the addiction. So just asking you, when you are reading the news or when you're kind of scrolling, looking for news, just starting to become aware of what's going on, what's driving that. Because part of it will be addiction, because that's the dopamine hit, that's the emotional manipulation of the headlines. It creates fear and anxiety, and then we start searching for an answer. We start searching for some safety. We start searching for leadership, of people standing up and saying, it's all going to be okay, don't worry, this is only temporary. So what is it that you're searching for? What need are you trying to meet by constantly checking the news, if you're constantly checking the news? So it's easy to get into that, particularly at the moment. So I noticed I was looking for quality information and I wasn't finding it because I was looking in the wrong place. And that's why I went to these other places, got very lost. And now I'm much happier because I just check the sources I've just mentioned. So really identifying the need, what's driving your finger to press that button and scroll, what's driving you to put the news on the television, what's driving you to listen to the news in your car, and just noticing what need am I trying to meet? And if your need is being met, if it works for you, then you're okay. But then you probably wouldn't be listening to this podcast. But if there's a need that's not being met, notice what's going on. So notice any addiction, notice what you're really looking for, and can you find it in a better place? And also notice what happens in your body. So often we're unaware. So I know quite a few people have the radio or the television on in the background and there's news going all the time. So just think about how you could be absorbing negative news, and your children as well. What are they absorbing? What are they hearing? What message are we giving them about the world? And you know, is it very negatively biased? And what's that doing to your children and to yourself if you're always absorbing this negativity? Because it's very easy to get caught up in that is the world's terrible, everything's gone wrong. But if you look back in history, there's always been times when people have said that. So there are different ways of looking at it. Even in a pandemic, I'm daring to say there are different ways of looking at it. So becoming mindful of your reaction, of what you're gaining or losing from absorbing the negative, constant news cycle, and using that useful information to maybe change your behaviour or not. So it's up to you, obviously. But just really becoming mindful, really becoming aware of the impact of your news consumption. Because for me, I think one of my deepest concerns about this time is that the level of fear and anxiety that has been put onto us. Now, I think it originally was put onto us to get us to wake up, realise there's a pandemic and lock down. because fear and anxiety is a very good way of controlling people. And I'm not saying that was terrible. I'm saying that's that's what it felt like happened to me. But that living under fear and anxiety for a long period of time is really, really bad for us. And so just noticing the impact of living under fear and anxiety. Notice if it feels heavy. Notice if it feels restrictive. Notice if because before this happened, a lot of us were carrying a lot of stress in our bodies, because before COVID, we were already living a lot of the time in that high alert state, because that's the way we've learned to get through. So starting to become aware of your body and what's going on, if you're carrying heaviness and anxiety, if it's like you're holding on, just waiting for this damn thing to end, that's useful information, because you don't need to hold on. It's a bit like being in a traffic jam and you're late and the lights, you've just got through, and then you hit a red light and you're like, oh no, I've got stopped again. And then your whole body tenses up, and it's like we start trying to push the car. It doesn't have any effect. It was exactly the same with being in this incredibly difficult situation, living under fear and anxiety, bracing yourself, waiting for it to end. It's not helpful. It's a completely understandable, natural, evolved stress response, but it's unhelpful. But you don't have to push it away. You don't have to do, unless it's your thing, you don't have to do deep breathing and masses of yoga. Just be kind to yourself. Notice in the body. Let's do a neutral noticing practice to see if we can identify in the body where you might be holding, and then just, if it's ready to go, allowing it to go. But I would say with any release work, it's really important to not push away, to respect, the body and the nervous system creates this stress response, this holding, this tension in the body to keep you safe. So I always like to start from a place of the body being miraculous, because it is, and this stress response has worked for such a long time, but it's unhelpful to keep it switched on, because you stay in high alert and the stress damages your health. And right now, you need a rocking immune system. So let's see if anything your body wants to release, but with absolute love and respect. So meeting yourself where you are right now, and we're going to drop into the body, give space for the body to release anything it's ready to release. And if it doesn't want to, that's okay, because it's still obviously helpful in some way, and you have to respect that, because that's how things are. And then if you keep repeating it, so I have release rituals, particularly when I go to bed, it's letting go of the day. But also I have them during my day, because obviously I spend time sitting, staring at a screen, and I just deliberately notice any tension from being in one position and let that go. So rituals of release are really good because they stop tension building up. But this one we're going to do now is deliberately a special one for any fear and anxiety that's creating tension in the body, or heaviness in the body, restriction in the body, that maybe you could let go of now. Should we give it a go? So I'm just going to invite you, and feel your feet on the ground. Allow your belly to soften if it wants to. Allow your shoulders to move away from your ears if they want to, and if they don't, just notice that too, completely neutrally. Feel your feet on the ground. Allow your belly to soften or not, and notice how you feel in this moment. Don't try to change anything. Don't try to relax. Just notice, completely neutrally. And then just washing your attention through the body, all the way from the head, down the body to the feet, and becoming aware of anywhere that feels heavy. Heavy from the blanket of fear and anxiety that the news spreads. And just notice if there are any physical sensations of heaviness in the body. And just for a moment, imagine that you could just lift off this heavy blanket of fear and anxiety and put it on the floor for a moment. Just imagine if you could. What would that feel like? Notice any feelings of lightness. Notice any resistance or finding this impossible. It's all just interesting. Physical sensations of allowing the weight of fear and anxiety to slip off your shoulders like a heavy blanket onto the ground. Just for a few moments. You can always pick it up later. And just notice for you how that feels. And then becoming aware of any restriction in the body, maybe across the chest or in the jaw or the belly or anywhere really. Just get curious, travel through the body, notice any feelings of restriction, any way of holding on, tightness. Get curious. Just notice. You could have been bracing against the pandemic for months. And then just allowing anywhere in the body that wants to release, wants to stop holding on, stop bracing. Just for a moment. Or not. Might not want to. That's okay. It's just an opportunity, space to release, to stop holding on, even for a moment, just to know what it feels like. And get curious about the physical sensations of resistance to this or ease from this. It's all just interesting. Feel your feet on the ground, softening throughout the body, easing, lightness or not. Wherever you are is wherever you are. And just be with that. With compassion, with kindness, with gratitude for being alive at this time. And when you're ready, without any hurry at all, I invite you to open your eyes and notice how you feel. Don't rush to move or do anything. Just allow that practice to settle for a moment. So I hope this has been helpful for you. And I hope that it's just highlighted the fact that the news doesn't tend to be good for your health. There is research, but I don't bother looking up or quoting it anymore because I used to spend my life in my head quoting research. And it's there if you want to Google it, but I don't recommend spending too much time on Google when you've got a life to live. And you know deep down what effect the news is having for you personally. So regardless of what research has highlighted, which is very, very helpful and important, but in the end it's about what's true for you and how this resonates or not with you. So just notice whether this causes you to want to change behaviour and then go gently, maybe daring to try and break listening to the news or not. Or just changing how rather than how much or what, just becoming aware of any tension it places in your body. Or maybe you're fine with it. I don't know, but you do. And I want you to live without overwhelm, without a heavy weight of fear and anxiety, without feeling that you ought to listen to the news, because you don't have to. There's other ways to stay informed. Healthier ways, happier ways. If you've got any good websites, please do let me know. Thank you. Bye-bye.